Hello everyone, Professor Arlene Torres here for the 21st century class. For this session, we're going to learn about problem solving. So, as I've said, one of the skill that belongs to the higher cognitive learning is problem solving. We have just finished talking about critical thinking, and critical thinking is a part of what we call problem solving. So to start, let us try to understand what can problem solving do to us? How can it help us? What kind of ability can it give us if we know how to solve problems? First, problem solving is the ability to plan and organize. So, if our skill in problem solving is honed or has been used so many times, it's easy for us to plan and organize things. Like, for example, if we look at ourselves and we are thinking on how to prepare ourselves to be a competent knowledge professional after we graduate, then we should start planning and organizing. So, how do we plan? We usually start by taking an inventory of what we know and what we know, what our knowledge is, what are our abilities, the skills that we have, and in case we are lacking, then we can probably search for the knowledge, the skills that we need to invest in ourselves. And so you have to organize in such a way that you have to have your priorities and at the same time your target date to prepare yourself for the workplace. It's also the ability to solve problems. Of course, um, if you're good in problem solving can help you solve problems. We face an in our everyday living, there's always a problem to solve. Like simply after we wake up and we're about to go to school, showing that we are going to school on a daily basis. And if you have a lot of clothes to choose from, one problem I think before you get dressed up is what will be your outfit for the day. And so you are going to choose your outfit based on maybe the weather, based on your mood, and based on the activities that you have for that day. And so, if you know these things, if you know the reasons to look into for you to come up with a decision of what outfit to wear, then you have solved your problem. It's also the ability to learn. So if you know how to absorb the lessons, if you know how to put it in practice, that's already what problem solving can do to you. We learn. We learn from problems. We learn from situations like if in case we're in a hurry and we are running out of time because we woke up late and our house is very far from the campus, from the university, and because you played games and then that delayed you waking up and you realize that, oh, I missed my wallet or I missed my credit card. And so learning that not having enough sleep and not waking up early would tell you a lesson that you will not be ready for the day's activity. Also, problem solving is the ability to work with others. Uh, Working with others means not only the activities that you do when you work in the companies or businesses that you are targeting, but working with others can simply be working on a project. Like right now, you are in the university, and sometimes your professors would give you something to work on, maybe a case study or probably a project. And most often, professors would like you to learn from others. And so Either that professor will be forming group for the different students, or you are given the freedom to choose your group members. So if you know how to solve problem, you can easily work with others. You can be a team player, and you can easily collaborate with them. And also, when we know how to solve problem, we can use our initiative. Why? Because we have the prior experience. Like, for example, you've seen someone about to enter the elevator, and that person has a lot of uh, things on both hands, and you've experienced before that it will be difficult for that to press the button if in case both of your hands are occupied. So because you have experienced that before, then probably uh, the initiative that you will be taking is to press the button for that person. Another ability that you can have when you know how to solve problem is the ability to lead. Leading is not only leading a group, but leading can be leading others to live right, or maybe leading others also who are working with you in the same project, or the whole class, or maybe an organization, or maybe when time comes that you are in the company that might be leading a unit or a department within the business organization. Another thing that we can do if we know how to solve problem is to take the risk. Some people, when they are facing risk, they usually withdraw from that risk, and that's very unfortunate because you don't learn from the situation. But instead, problem solvers would usually take the risk. Like, they will try to face the situation, face the problem. And in that case, whether it becomes successful or unsuccessful, at least they learned something from their experience. And that only happens because they took risk. And also, we just finished the topic about critical thinking. So, problem solving also will help you to think critically. So, meaning if you know how to solve the problem, you will also be able to think critically, and at the same time creatively. Creatively means sometimes the decision is not within the box, but the decision is outside the box, and that is creative thinking. If you have questions regarding this problem solving introduction, let's talk about it during our online class. So let's move to the next slide. Why is learning problem solving? Do we get this question? Why is learning problem solving? So we are now learning about problem solving. Last week, we learned about critical thinking. So why learning is problem solving? Meaning to say, what we are in now is we're trying to solve maybe the problem that is invisible to you. Maybe before you don't know what's the proper way of learning. But as we go to learning and learning about problem solving, we now understand how to learn the different skills. And as I've said, last week we talked about the critical thinking skill, and now currently we're looking at the problem solving skill. So first thing that we have to understand is authenticity. Authenticity means real. It means the reality. Okay, so in our everyday life and work, we always solve problems. Like my previous example of waking up, and then you have so many clothes to choose from. Now your problem is what will be your outfit for the day. So that's just a simple problem, not too complicated, but it leads you to make a decision that would be based on the weather, decision that would be based on maybe your mood, which is very subjective, and decision that can be based on the activities that you have for the day, especially for the ladies, okay? Because we have more choices, not like the guys that, of course, they can just wear pants or maybe shorts. But of course, for ladies, there are so many clothes to choose from. So, simple problem like choosing your clothes, or sometimes it's about lunchtime and you're inside the college, or you're inside the building, and there's no cafeteria or there's no restaurant inside the building. So, maybe another problem that you will be facing at that moment would be where to eat and what to eat. Okay. Or maybe if you don't have a lunch break because of your tight schedule, maybe another question is when to eat. Okay. So simple things that you have to solve. And another thing is sometimes problems are given to us, like for example in a classroom. So problems are used to provide a purpose for learning. Like if you are studying math, okay, you're given some problems to solve because learning how to solve the problem would mean understanding the, the question. Or maybe you are in your business class and the teacher would like to test your knowledge about the concept that was given. And so the way for the teacher or the way for the professor to check and evaluate the student if they learn that theory maybe would be to give a case study. Okay, so it's purposely done, so there's an intention why the professor, or maybe why your parents, or maybe your boss are giving you the problem because they would like you to learn something from it, and yeah, learn something for it. Now intrinsic motivation can come in only if you will subject yourself to the problem given to you. Like if you're given a math problem to solve, it's your choice. Would you like to solve it or not? Not solving it would mean not getting a score. Or maybe another would be the given case study. You don't feel like working on it because you don't know, and maybe because you don't want to tire yourself thinking. So, your intrinsic motivation will be something that will make you respond to that intentional problem given to you. So, you always have a choice. Like, for example, listening to this presentation. Is there an intrinsic motivation? Like, are you trying to listen because you would like to learn about problem solving? Or are you listening because you have to? Okay. So I don't know what's your motivation, what's your intrinsic motivation, but that's about intentionality. Another thing is conceptual anchoring. Let's try to break down this word for us to understand what does it mean. Conceptual or concept means ideas. Anchoring would be the link, okay, linking or trying to connect it to something. So it's a knowledge constructed while solving problem, and the knowledge constructed while solving problems is more integrated, better retained, and more transferable. So more integrated would mean that when you're solving problem, when you are subjecting yourself to some issues that you have to complete, like for example, a case study given to you. The learning of the theories that I previously mentioned is easier because you learn the theory and you can put it into practice by working on the case study. Or let's say, for example, when you are taking a driving lesson and not driving lesson but a driving test. So during the driver testing, okay, if you want to get a driver's license, then you have to pass the test. And how do you pass the test? Passing the test would mean passing the written exam, and after the written exam would be the practical driving. So why is there practical driving wherein you already passed the written test? Because the learning, when there is practice together with the written exam, is much more integrated and better retained. And also, there is the confirmation that you did not only learn about driving in paper, meaning to say only after passing the exam, but you did learn it because you were able to put into practice what you have written on that piece of paper or during that computer test induced exam. Okay, so that's what we call conceptual anchoring. So you learn more when you're given something to work on. And the last is ontology. What is ontology? So, ontology is the knowledge that results from solving the problem. So, as I've said, this is somewhat related to conceptual anchoring because you experience how to do the practical test in driving. And sometimes you don't just get it in one exam, you get it after repeating the test because it's so hard for you to pass the test. So the next time around you take the exam, you get better. Next time, much better. And the fourth one, you're the best because you were able to pass that test. So the knowledge that results from solving the problem is more meaningful. Why? Because you can always go back to that past experience and say, oh, this was my mistake before. So I should remember that whenever I will see this, this is the thing that I have to do. Okay, so learning problem solving is very important because it happens in an everyday life, so it's very authentic, and sometimes it's intentional, meaning to say there is a purpose for learning if we have a problem to solve. And also, the conceptual anchoring is related to the testing the skill of solving the problem. And the ontology means the knowledge that we get from solving problem is more meaningful. I know that this is not easy to understand. So again, if there is something that you don't understand from this slide presentation, open it up during our online discussion. So, why do you solve problems? I mean, as I always say, you always have a choice to solve the problem, to face it, or not to face it, and turn your back. So, solving problem or is a step-by-step process. So when I say step by step, how do you solve the problem when it's a step by step? So the first thing that I would like to ask from you, if you are using the skill, is what processes do you use? Okay, what processes do you use when you try to solve a problem? I would say processes because it's not an instant yes and no, but it's a step by step process to reach into a solution. And then, can you explain them to another person? Like, for example, you pass the practical driving test. Can you explain how did you pass it? Or in fact, you really are a first timer when it comes to handling a car. Okay. And another question that we can ask in relation to how do you solve problems is, do these processes vary depending upon the problem? So, what do you think? Are you using the same formula for every problem? Or you have a set of formulas or a set of process depending upon the problem? So I want you to think about this because thinking about this is using your critical thinking skill, and at the same time we are solving the problem of knowing how to solve problem. Okay. Now, I also would like to ask you, what skills do you use in problem solving? So how do you solve it? Like for example, a while ago, how to use it. Now, what skills do you use in solving the problem? So what is suggested here is you're making judgments, or you're making your use of your analytical skill, or your decision making, or you learn how to collect information, or you plan. So I don't have an instant answer for you at the moment, but I have enumerated the different skills that might help you in solving a problem. Now, what's the beauty of learning how to solve problem? What's the beauty of exposing ourselves to everyday problems, and sometimes we are successful, sometimes we are successful, but what happens to us? What kind of processing happens when we always solve problems? So we become an expert in a way that because you've experienced a lot of problem, you've missed some, you've hit some, you are successful to some, you are unsuccessful to the others, and you're fortunate to find a solution for some problems, and others are you're unfortunate to find the right way and you made a mistake. But that's not important. What is important is you become an expert as you allow yourself to solve problem. And people who know the area of knowledge thoroughly, meaning if you keep on solving problems within your knowledge territory, like for example, math, your problem solving becomes more natural. Or you may be skilled in I would say cooking, and cooking is also a self-expression. And sometimes there are some problems that we incur whenever we cook. Like for example, the food gets burned, or it's undercooked, or sometimes it's tough, or it's sometimes salty. So because you've been doing that, you've been cooking, or you've been a chef for quite a time, then solving the problem becomes more natural. So the more you practice the knowledge that you have would help you to solve the problem easily, or as they would say, very natural. You don't think of it as a problem anymore because you know how to approach it. And also, people who can think of alternatives even when no clear solution seems apparent. This is where creativity comes in. Creativity means sometimes if you ask different people about their opinion regarding the problem that you are facing, and they would say it's hopeless or there's no solution about it. But because you are open, you are creative in finding an answer for the problem that you have, then you can always find some alternative. Sometimes you say it's already a problem, so I might as well try this one. So if it works, good. If it's not, that's okay. At least I've tried. So these are the things that you will definitely learn, definitely acquire when you keep on exposing yourself to solving problem. You become an expert. The learning becomes the solving of problems becomes very natural for you, and then you can be creative in thinking of alternatives. So where do you want to be? Somebody who always rely on someone to solve the problem, or somebody who is independent and is courageous to face the problem? So going back to your student life, what types of problem uh, you can learn to solve? So as a student, okay, this is an opportunity for you to learn how to solve. This is actually I would say a platform for you to test yourself, for you to equip yourself, not really to test, but first to equip about problem solving and maybe to put it into practice. And after putting it into practice, the next thing would be the skills development or the practicing of facing the problem. First is decision making problems. So, as we said, decision making uh, comes in small and big forms. Like, for example, what will you do with your life after you graduate from the university? That's a decision making. Or maybe as simple as how will you spend your day wisely? That's a decision making. Okay? And also, another type of problem that you can solve is troubleshooting. So, what's troubleshooting? Troubleshooting might be given a situation, like, for example, in you're driving a car and then suddenly it stopped, and you know that the problem is you have a flat tire. So, what will you do? How will you help yourself to be on a place wherein you can find help? So for the meantime, what can be the solution to that flat tire? Is there a solution? So you might do some troubleshooting in there. Or maybe when you are cooking, okay? So you're trying to cook something and then you've given your best, and then when you taste it, it tastes so salty. So what will you do? Can you still troubleshoot that food? Can you still find a remedy to make it palatable, or will you just have to throw it away? So that's troubleshooting. Also, diagnostic solution. Diagnostic solution meaning diagnosing a problem. Like, how do we diagnose a problem? Can can you think of a way like your car? You're driving a car and it keeps on, getting and it keeps on stopping while you're driving, and you find out that because it's very old, and there are so many parts that are also worn out, and what do you think you can do about it? So is there a way to make the life of that car longer, or do you have to really let go of the car? So before you decide on that, you usually diagnose if there is a solution that you can adopt for that car issue. And story problems are similar to case study. It's just said in another way. Story problems are situations that are sometimes created to be used for learning, or sometimes it happened and it was taken to give the lesson to the students. So they know, professors know, like, for example, strategic management professors or business professors would know if you learn the theories and concepts, because you can actually solve the case. Okay. And strategic performance is something that is usually business related, or yeah, sometimes most often business related. So what kind of strategies are you going to, you know um, adapt or to put together in order for you to make the business more successful? Like, for example, what's happening to us now is we are experiencing like a pandemic, not only here in Korea, but it's a global pandemic. Now, what would be the strategies to reopen the business, or to resuscitate the business, or to make it work and run? So, what will you do since Korea is trying to limit the entry of foreign travelers? So, can we still resuscitate the tourism industry? And so you're coming up with strategies in order for you to solve this this dwindling uh, tourism industry problem of a dwindling number of arrival. Okay, or sometimes we can look at the policy, like the policy of the government with regards to how to take care of the COVID virus spread. So, one policy that was undertaken by the government is to quarantine people for 14 days upon entry to Korea. Do you think it helps? Or if not, then what can be done? Then the dilemma is, what is a dilemma for you? How do you define a dilemma? It's also another word for what's this? Another issue for a situation in which it's very difficult to make a decision. It's a difficult choice to do because the alternatives given are usually undesirable. So, what can be done? Like, we really have to weigh the alternatives, and usually we don't want to to make a solution. We don't want to decide on it, but we really have to. Like, for example, the way we manage COVID virus here. So, what can be done? Are we going to open Korea because we're running out of money coming from tourism? Or we'll just keep our door closed because we're more concerned about the safety of the citizens and the people residing here. So these are some types of problem that students can learn to solve. So ask yourself, have you experienced being given the opportunity to work on these types of problem that I discussed? If not, and if again you don't understand it fully, let's talk about it. Okay, so how do we solve the problem? Okay, so problem solving, before we start working on it, before we start solving, we have to first understand the two categories of problem. So sometimes I ask my student, is there a problem? They will say yes. So what's a problem? And the moment you ask them what's a problem, they cannot state what the problem is. So it's very important to understand what is a problem and how do we categorize this problem. So the first category is a well-defined problem. So well-defined problem means goals are clear and there's a single or a definable range of solution. So well defined means you can identify your problem, you can state your problem because it's out there, it's in your face, and you know what to accomplish whenever you're facing that. And also, there's one single or definable range of solution, which is easy because you need not to process, okay, the solution choosing because there's just one answer. And the other one is ill-defined problems, wherein the goals are unknown, they are vague or difficult to understand, and extremely situation dependent, meaning to say, this is more difficult to solve because it's situation dependent. There are so many factors that, or the solution is dependent on the situation, and there are also multiple correct solution. But when we are given a problem, sometimes we cannot choose between the two. You cannot just say, okay, I'm open to entertaining problems, and I will only entertain well-defined problem. I don't want to look at the ill-defined because that's very hard for me. But the thing is, in life, we don't have the choice. The only choice that we have is to identify whether it's a well-defined or an ill-defined problems. Before we go to the process, let me just show you that a bit. But I want to wait. That's just okay. I want to give you this chart. Sorry for the first two slides. This this actually chart is showing us the problem type. So as I've said, there's the well-defined and the ill-defined problem. When it comes to solution, for the well-defined, it's one correct solution, and for the ill-defined, more than one correct solutions. And for the strategies, so remember that if you have a solution, then according to the solution, you have to select the strategy. So the well-defined has multiple ways to get there. Okay? And also for the ill-defined, multiple ways to get there. Is this something good? Yeah, because it doesn't mean that the decision making or the strategy for the problem solving can be dependent on the personality, can be dependent on the style, or can be dependent on the experience of the person facing the problem. So, what are the examples that we can come up with in terms of well defined? An example for a well defined is in the reading data or in reading the data, there's a concreted value. Like if you are reading an information, a set of numbers, you just have to look for one answer. Like mostly in math, when you add, there's only one answer. And when you multiply, there's only one answer. There's only one correct solution. It depends on how you work on the solution or on the sum, the answer, but there's only one correct value. Now for the ill-defined, it's reading beyond. Reading beyond means you really have to practice your creativity because the creativity can bring you to a new hypothesis. It's a little difficult to understand because we're talking about hypothesis. Hypothesis is guessing. It's a guess, and sometimes that guess is correct, sometimes it's not, but it needs further assessment or further way of trying to solve the problem. Okay, now in our everyday life, okay, work problems are often ill defined. And so, welcome to this new information that everyday work problems are often ill defined. So, the more that we really have to understand how to address these problems. Okay, so let me go back to the two slides that I skipped, but at least I have preempt uh, the contents of the next two slides. So, problem solving, as I've said, is a process. And according to Ferry and Rose Gordon, this is 1998, they suggested this process. First is to identify problem exists. So, question, is there a problem? And if you say yes, okay, what's the problem? And maybe we can say that this is the problem, blah, blah, blah. Or sometimes we say there's a problem, but I cannot figure out what the problem is. That's what we call the ill defined problem. Now, so from that problem, the next thing that we do is we analyze the data. Okay, so how do we analyze the data? Analyzing the data would be looking at the existing problem. Okay, and then after looking at the existing problem, maybe what we can do is we try to interpret the data. So after analyzing, we can say, oh, there's something wrong in the data. That's why we do have a problem. And then reviewing the solution. This is actually difficult to understand if we'll just look at the arrows. But let's make it a little easier by citing an example. So let's say, for example, you want to eat cookies, and since you want to eat cookies, you you picked a recipe from the internet because you don't want to buy. You really would like to develop your baking skill. And so instead of buying, what you did is you picked a recipe from the internet, and you bought the ingredients and you cooked it, and you have a picture of the product that you would like to come out after that baking. And it so happened that the product did not come out as similar to what the picture has shown you. And so you say, oh, there's a problem. There's a problem. Why is my baked product not similar to the photo that was attached to the recipe? And so, after identifying that there's a problem, what is the problem? The baked product is not similar to the photo that was in the recipe. So you start now to analyze what is the problem? So is the problem uh, about the picture? Was it Photoshop? Or is the problem based on how I measured my ingredients? Or is the problem about the procedure that I followed? So you try to analyze and you look back and you went back. Okay, let me walk back myself to the time that I was measuring the ingredients. So you're trying to analyze now. Let me walk back to the procedure that I followed while uh, I'm preparing the butter. Okay, and so after walking back and after recalling what you have done, you have interpreted the data, and oh, I see now. I made a mistake in measuring the flour. And so that mistake in measuring the flour is causing a different baked product compared to the picture that was posted. So you have interpreted that there was something wrong, not in the recipe, but when you follow the recipe. And specifically, your mistake is in the measuring of the flour. Okay? So what will be now your solution? Your solution is okay, now I know my problem. Next time I will be more careful in my measuring so that I can do the same thing as the photo. So in that simple example, we have underwent the problem solving process. We I can give more example when we again meet online. Let's move forward by looking at the problem solving attributes. So, when we say attributes, these are the qualities. These are the problem solving attributes, means the way you deal with a problem, the way you deal with it, the way you cost uh, the issue. First thing is have a go attitude. Have a go attitude, as I've said, means okay, there is a problem. I acknowledge that there is a problem, and so I'm willing to face it and to find a solution. So have a go attitude. Or the other way is I don't want to face a problem. I just turn my back from it. Okay? So have a go attitude. Another is creativity and resourcefulness. Creativity means, as I've said, sometimes the answer is not within the box, the answer is unknown to you, and so you have to find a way. That's being resourceful. Find a way to find the answer or to find the solution. Another is problem solving helps you to make links. Like what I've said, trying to analyze a problem is I look back. I look back at my activity of baking. I reminded myself how did I measure the ingredients, how did I follow the recipe, and making links means I was able to realize that oh, it's in the measurement that I made a mistake. Okay, and that's why I wasn't able to prepare something similar to whatever I'm about to do. And also, it means flexibility. Sometimes in problem solving, and if you're doing it all at the same time with other people, for them it's easy to work on. But for you, sometimes your way of doing it does not work. So probably what you can try to do would be to go on a different way. So being flexible mean going on a different way, not the way that you used to do it. It might help you to solve the problem. And also, problem solving would mean sometimes that you cannot be on your own in solving the problem. You have to work together with other people. So you have to work as a team in order for you to solve that problem. And another attribute that you have to have is you have to be self motivated. Self motivated is, sometimes professors would give you the problem, would give you something to work on. But the professor cannot force you to, work on that. So again, the motivation to work on the challenge depends on how you respond in the challenge. Are you willing to take the challenge or not? So you have to be self motivated. Another is accept setbacks as learning experiences. As I've said, it doesn't guarantee that you face a problem, that it will result to a good result or to the expected outcome. Sometimes we have to redo things, sometimes we have to learn from our mistake, and that's why we say that mistake is a learning experience. It's not a waste, it's a learning experience. Whether we make it or not, it's a learning experience. And also, another attribute is you have to persevere. Sometimes the first try, it doesn't work. The next time, it doesn't do. The third time, not working still. Fourth time, fifth time. And sometimes you get tired, but never get tired. I would say persevere because time will come as you keep on practicing and as you keep on addressing the issue, you become a better problem solver because you persevere. If you just tried it once and if you just, work it once and gave up, you will never be a skilled person or you can never be called a problem solver. And also, another attribute of a problem solver is that problem solver is willing to take a calculated risk. Whenever we're facing a problem, there's always a risk involved. And that risk can be the risk of losing the face because you have given a wrong answer, or the risk of failing because you didn't get the way it should be done. But of course, that is something that you have to have with you because taking a calculated risk is a way to actually winning that gold medal to become a problem solver. And another attribute is a problem solver is an independent learner, meaning even though you're not given projects of something to solve, something to work on, something to remedy, you try to subject yourself to problem solving or maybe to reading first something and then maybe testing how far you have read or how what you have understood from the reading that you have done. Okay, so ask yourself, are you ready to work and not just to work but to become a better person and to be a better problem solver? Do you have these attributes? So let's continue. We've seen this one. So again, I would remind you that everyday work problems are often ill defined. And this is the last slide. I think you are interested to know how do you learn, okay? So I got this from the NTL Institute for Applied Behavioral Science, and this is a research conducted by them. And they found out that 5% of what students learn is from the lecture. So you definitely get something from the lecture. The thing is, it's only 5%. And when you read, 10% of what you learn is from reading. That's why, again, I said before going online, make sure that you have read the lecture notes I've given to you. You've seen the record because that's the only way that you can participate in the discussion. And 20% of what they learned is from the audiovisual presentation. So I guess better than reading the lecture notes. By looking at this presentation, it will give you an additional percentage of learning, and that's 20%. And also, 30% of what they learn it from a demonstration. So, demonstration means if, say, for example, you're learning a skill, the way how to do it, the way how to assemble, maybe, or the way how to create an output is very effective because demonstration, according to the study, gives you 30% of learning. And you might be wondering, what is the bottom percentage of learning? So 50% of what students learn is when they are engaged in the discussion or in a discussion. The same reason why I ask you to interact with me, to participate in the discussion, because you'll learn better when you are engaged in a discussion. And 75% of what you're learning is learning by doing. So after the demonstration, you try to do it by yourself without the help of other people, but trying to look back at what you have seen and doing it by yourself. And the biggest percentage is 90% of what you learn it when you teach someone else. And I guess I would like to say that the reason why I know this it's because I uh, I actually put this into practice, and for me to retain the learning that I'm sharing with you, the skills of learning, it's because I teach you how to learn. And so that's the end. But again, I'd like to add some more things because sometimes students are asking, why this teacher or why this professor keeps on giving a project? I think that professor would just like to make us busy. But in reality, these are the things that happen to you when you work on projects. Okay? You learn collaboration when you work in teams. Again, um, look back and check what did you learn when you work in teams. And also, when you're given like an essay, when you're given something to work on, if the teacher wants you to learn written communication, they give a project wherein you have to write your output. Also, to learn critical thinking, take on problems. So, as I've said, the way to learn how to think well is to face the problem or to face a problem. And also to develop citizenship, take on civic duties, like some students have mentioned during their presentation that aside from helping in the household chore, they are actively participating in community projects by helping in the library or maybe by assisting senior citizens. And that's a good work, that's a good community project for a cause. And the reason why I force, okay, that's the word that I use. to present because I want them to learn oral communication. That's why we are doing this online class. It's because I want you to learn oral communication. And if you want to learn about careers, you want to check if that work suits you and if you like that kind of work, you have to do internships. And to learn technology, you have to use technology. And I think I have put this together in every activity that I'm giving you because I want you to maximize learning. And for you to learn the content, you have to do all of the above. So I guess I gave you an answer why professors give you projects and most often a lot of projects because they want you to learn the content, to learn the course that you're taking, and for you to learn it all, you have to do all of the above mentioned words. So that's about problem solving. I hope you learned something. I hope I was able to enlighten you regarding problem solving. So thank you and see you on our online class.